All right, David. Howdy.
Howdy.
End of the week.
It's really the end of the week.
Yeah. And so you had an interesting conversation with a client just the other day that we were talking. We said that would be a great topic because it's something we see a lot, and it's questions that people are asking of us a lot. So let's set the stage. People build their warehouses way too big. It happens all the time, and with some of the headlines that folks have been pulling out for us to look at this week, there are lots of examples of this in the news. Distributors across the U.S. are scaling back. Well, this is scaling back staffing in warehouses, including Walmart and Amazon. That's not quite a perfect headline for what I'm looking at, but I mean, the font, Jeremy puts like a font size of like 8 to so I can't really read the other two. But according to
would be kind but he's back because we had other issues last week.
We're very happy that Jeremy's back handling this, but still you can't get it right. But Jones Lang's JLL, the one of large real estate brokers, says that demand for warehouse space has declined 12% year over year, kind of an indication of a shrink in anticipated needs. So I thought we'd start first with, all right, why do people build warehouses too big for their needs? How does that happen? One might ask. And the best place to start is let's just walk through very basic. What do we do when we design a warehouse? What is that?
But a question for you. The example or the topic I brought up was e-commerce, direct-to-consumer focus. But you're asking the question greater. We start
greater, and I'll tell you, I have a roadmap in my head of how to direct this. So just tell us first, how do we go about deciding? So I'm a client. Hey, David, I'm out of space in this warehouse. I need a new warehouse. Now, to the layperson or someone who's never really been involved in this decision process before of going to a new warehouse or new distribution center, what do we do? Do we say, take what you have and add 10%? I mean, what do we do to figure out, if I'm out of space today, how do I figure out what size my new warehouse should be for tomorrow?
Yeah, and even that first element of a prospect or a client saying, I'm out of space, needs to be validated, right? Because that it could be an impression, and there could be things in there that, most likely you are out of space, but by how much? So the first step is to validate that statement, and to also, when it's to define what is the ideal requirement or the real space you need, has to be looked into the future. There's what you need today, and there's what you need a certain number of years down in the future. So those are the first things you want to do. We can do this, not we can, but we do it through the analysis of their operation, kind of modeling in a quantitative way.
Sure. I get all that. You're going to do some analysis.
Yeah.
But the key point that you made there is, I want to design if I'm going to go through the entire massive headache of setting up a new distribution center, right? Moving people where they work, right? You're never able to just move next door. You're going to be moving to an entirely different neighborhood in a city, maybe an entirely different region. It's a massive dislocation for your organization. And if you're going to undertake that kind of investment, not only of money, but of time and pain, you need that distribution center to last you some time, right?
Right.
So the key thing you said is it's got to be future-proofed. Essentially, you've got to size it based on a projection of what people think they'll be doing in a period of time. We normally what's a design horizon that we would look at?
Well, you want your warehouse to last you like 5 years once you're in it. So depending on the size, the scale, the timeline of the project, you could look as far as 7 years, but call it 5 to 7 years.
And the reason you don't go much further is just becomes
Yeah,
right.
No one can predict.
The crystal ball becomes way too foggy to figure out. Now, one thing that we should point out is that's the footprint of the building. The land, in a situation where you're buying land, you want to buy enough land or the building you move into to be expandable, so that you may only be investing for a 5-year horizon, but you need to give yourself the opportunity to expand beyond that. Because again, we're trying to make these moves as close to quote unquote permanent as possible. Rule of thumb we normally would say is you need the land. If you're doing it by a land purchase or a greenfield site on an absolute genuine green field, we want to, just as a starting point, at least be able to double the facility footprint. So you need to buy the land in consequence. That means facility footprint, all the truck and employee parking, all of that has to be doubleable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that whole decision rests on a projection, a projection of how you think your business will move, and you're going to work with all your team, your sales team, primarily, to develop scenarios. So a lot of folks will look at, like, what is my conservative, my sort of pessimistic, optimistic, and realistic projections, and then you'll run a bunch of sensitivity around a design to say, okay, this gives you, if you're pessimistic, it gives you 7 years. If you hit a realistic target, it gives you 5. If it's optimistic, you're going to need to expand 3 years from now, just to make it simple. That's the first crux. And so obviously there's a forecast that can go right or wrong. You win an account, you lose an account. The economy tanks. There's 100 reasons why that projection can be off, and you end up with a building that's way too big. It's a pretty classic problem in warehousing, and then we'll get into the particular nuance of what we're saying. But the traditional thing, I mean, what's option one if I realize, my building is just way too big?
Option one is your objective is to, how do I use that capacity, right? Otherwise, for financial performance, you want this to be utilized. So you can do a few things, and we've seen pretty much all of them with different projects. You could rent space if you have, you can physically kind of fence off a piece of the warehouse, allocate some doors to a new tenant for a certain period of time as you grow into it. That's one thing. You could potentially bring in-house more of the if you're a retailer, direct-to-store the deliveries from your vendors. You could take that on your own, or you could also become a 3PL for other operators.
Yeah, I would say that of those three things, the first one is actually the most traditional.
Yes.
Right? The most traditional approach.
Yeah.
I got too much space. I carve out a certain 20%, 30% of my footprint. I put up a fence. I sublease it. And that has, now you're a landlord. If you own the building, now you're a landlord. That's got its own mix of complications, but it's the classic thing. I think the other two options, one is I think have come out more in the particulars of the situations we're seeing today than more traditional.
Yes.
And the way I would frame it is, especially like if you look at this, distributors are scaling back, including Walmart and Amazon. Well, we've known Amazon has been scaling back for actually quite a long while now. But I think everything around e-commerce and the COVID, so let's say we had a COVID wave, and the whole world has been talking about supply chain disruption in terms of the impact the pandemic had on supply chains. And as I've said before, I think we misinterpreted that as a supply disruption. I think supply was a real secondary issue. It was a demand disruption. You know, you and I travel a lot for a living. We did not travel, or traveled very minimally. A lot of the folks in our lives that we deal with, hotel staff, restaurant staff, as we travel, car rental company staff, these people's lives were devastated by the pandemic. And I say that to say all the money that was going into travel moved into home renovations. Yeah. And so we saw that many of our home renovation and home builder clients, not that we work with this, so like Home Depots of the world, they went like crazy. Suddenly there was a lumber shortage, and well, of course there's a lumber shortage. We only make so much lumber to meet normal demand. The demand completely went crazy, and the symptom of crazy demand was a supply problem. Anyway, I say that to say all the folks who were building warehouses, particularly to do direct to consumer during the pandemic. You know, I think you saw this as much as I. All the articles that saw this as much as me. I shouldn't have said I. That was very bad grammar. But all the articles about, you know, maybe this is the catalyst that turns, you know, B2C as
the
permanent
people
way we do
buy
business.
stuff. Yeah.
You know, a small anecdote. It's very funny. I have a pre-Christmas order from the SAQ, the booze store, right? I like to make sure that I don't have to dash out for a bottle of wine while my family and friends are visiting, or I'm going to visit them and I want to gift a bottle of wine. And this delivery, which was supposed to be 5 days, it's now around 2 weeks. So I actually did track the order. I've never had a problem before. I tracked the order. And I can now see in the courier system, I won't name the company, but let's say the one that normally does courier deliveries in the Greater Montreal area. And so I'm tracking it, and I can see that they claim they delivered it, but there was no one there to receive the delivery. Yeah. You know, which is weird because I have, you know, a doorman at the door who's there 24 hours and does that. That's one of the wonderful things that this person or whoever it is does. And I've never had a problem before. And so then it goes back to the warehouse or the sorting facility, and there was a 5-day waiting period for me to go pick it up, but I had no notification of this. And then they sent it back. So just frustrating.
Yeah, so this is you're saying that there are experiences that there are experiences where you're like, well, direct to consumer or buying online is really not what I should do for certain type of products.
I just should have gone down to the store.
Yeah, exactly.
And just picked the wine out myself and done it. I was just doing it because you at USAQ sent me an email telling me I had these special offers just curated just for me. I absolutely fell sucker to that invite. And I said, it's convenient. Now it's totally not convenient. It's such a negative experience.
It's ironic that you bring that as an example, because we know the SAQ is actually increasing or expanding massively their warehouse and putting in automation and increasing their direct-to-consumer capabilities. So maybe
to do better direct-to-consumer.
Yeah, in part, yeah.
Yeah, but this was a delivery issue, really. I know it's not the SAQ's fault. Except that as the retailer, they're responsible for the full chain of experience.
Well, it's only because you work in this that you can make that distinction. Anyone else will
just blame the
SAQ.
Well, I still also blame the SAQ. But my point is, we went through this insane thing, and people were like, "Oh no, this is it. This is the time that we all became iPad shoppers." Yeah. And then when the reality wore off. We're rediscovering, actually, you know, a lot of people don't have all that much to do on a Saturday morning, and shopping is a very pleasant way to fill up your time.
Fill up your time. It's sad in a way, but yes, it is.
I don't feel sad.
Yeah.
I like a grocery shop. I enjoy going into the grocery store.
Yeah,
I don't find it an unpleasant experience.
And you bring up grocery, and that's, again, we have a client where, like...
Many, but...
Yeah, we have many grocery clients, but I can think of one where they based on not just, it's not like we told them exactly, we supported some of the thoughts that they had, but they were very prudent in that.
Not over-investing. Where some of their competitors have spent upwards of maybe $1 billion to serve the central Canadian market.
Yeah.
Which has been insane with the Ocado system.
Yeah.
You know, Kroger, same thing, right?
Yeah.
They've paused their rollout of Ocado automated grocery facilities. They are struggling with throughput issues.
Yeah.
They're actually blessed with the problem that we're talking about in this podcast, failed demand. Demand that doesn't materialize.
Yeah.
So here we are. We have these warehouses that get built out in a period of fevered fantasy that... This is the new
norm.
The new normal. Thank you. That's what we were saying that during the pandemic. The new normal. The new normal, and everyone was going to order online, and now you come out. It's 2024 is just around the corner, and you have buildings that are less than half utilized.
Yeah.
And it's specifically these direct consumer buildings that have been so overly conceptualized that traditional thing that we were just saying at the beginning of, oh, I've overbuilt, I'm going to chain off 30% and I'm going to sublease.
Yeah.
I can't because I got this spaghetti of conveyors everywhere and this fusilli of case shuttle systems everywhere. And I've got all these, you know, like Monty Python, I've got all these machines that go ping, and I'm the future, but I'm in the future, but the economy is still in the present, and what do I do? So that's what we're asking you now. Now this is where your two options.
The two other options that can be looked at. So the two other options were either, well, depending on your own current state, and as I said, in a retail environment, you may have a small, large, or portion of your inventory in the stores that gets delivered directly from the vendor. So could you take on some of that internally, use your facility to now take on the distribution of those goods? So
let's just cover that for 1 second. The retailers, very few retailers self-distribute 100% of the merchandise in their stores.
Yeah.
And partly that's because it makes no sense to. And partly it can also be just capacity bottlenecks in the
facility.
Right. It was funny though. Sometimes it's a little crazy. So we have our dear client down in Maine, and they in their stores when lobster season comes around, they love to do a beautiful lobster themed display in their stores to show you all the products that they manufacture that you can use for your lobster feast. And they have smack dab in the center of it this stuffed lobster, right? Which, you know, I would have thought it was a prop, but that's why I'm not, you know, a multi-millionaire retailer like the family that built that business. No, that lobster you can pick up. It's got a price tag, and you know your child can have their stuffed lobster. Don't worry about it. They've got lobsters in the back of the store. They could just plop a new one. You know, it's for sale. It's for sale. But back in the warehouse, there's these dust collecting lobster toys just sitting on a shelf,
waiting for once in a season.
Waiting for, I think it's like Memorial Week. I might be making this up. Americans will kill me, but something like that. Waiting for one weekend where that's their big display.
So why are you doing this yourself, right?
Yeah, couldn't you? You should just have the vendors directly ship that to the stores. Is what I was saying.
Yeah.
But it falls on deaf ears because it's warehouse people I'm with. They're like, yeah, exactly. You know how many warehouse people, they'd rather have everything go direct to stores
Have an
than have to deal with
empty
it.
warehouse.
But okay, so your point is,
Well, so if you have so as you're saying, there's a reason why you have a current setup of self-distribution and direct-to-store delivery. So changing that may not be ideal. It's something to consider because what you're trying to achieve is increased utilization of your facility, but you are moving away from a situation that in itself was maybe the right situation. Right. So then to move away from a good situation means that for you to take that on, well, okay, you have the facility, and let's say you're well equipped from a ERP and warehouse management system. You have the capabilities to do it, but you're going to take on an additional cost, which is the delivery from your facility to your stores, with the idea that the savings come from
cost of goods reduction,
and you would tell your vendors, well, you don't have to ship to all my stores. You can only ship to a central facility now, so your cost should go down. But that's easier said than done.
It's always a tug of war.
Yeah.
So cost of goods reduction and potentially an inventory reduction in your network if there are buying minimums that the store carries a little bit more inventory than they would like. Hey, I have to buy a case. This is slow moving stuff. If I could get it from my own DC,
I have half a case.
I'd have half a case on hand.
Yeah.
And then across a number of stores, that could add up to some serious money too.
Yeah.
But your point is, you probably were already. We're talking about an idealized state.
Yeah.
You probably already got this optimal situation, the right decision of what to DSD and what to self-distribute.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got this new drag on your balance sheet, which is an underutilized asset, and you're going to try and find new product to self-distribute from there, which actually you're only doing it to sort of sweep a problem under the carpet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But there may be good opportunities, and it should be studied.
Yeah.
And then the other option, because we're running out of time, and this is the one that's kind of interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah. Could you become a distributor for other organizations that do either they need more capacity, or they just don't self-distribute at all? They don't have a facility. So can you become, and that has a whole lot of implications, right? If you think about from an IT perspective, if you start falling into a multi-company, multi-entity, how do you track inventory? Are you capable of changing the way you're using your system so that this is done? Give the visibility to your potential customers, new customers, new type of customers. Give them the visibility, be able to do what you have to do. That's one challenge that is important. The other one is finding those clients.
The point is, so we've been asked this before. Mm-hmm. Actually, we have helped. We have one of our dear clients out in LA that we actually have done a lot of work to help them take their unused capacity and provide 3PL services. And your point is, first of all, let's even pretend for half a second that operationally within the four walls, that's easy. Because if anyone who's thinking about this is listening, that's the easy part. The hard part now is the second easiest thing. The second easiest thing is the technology component. You have your business, you've built a digital platform to support your business, and you're now creating an entirely different subsidiary business that has an entirely different feature set requirement, like how do I invoice? How do I track and invoice these new clients? I need a system that can do that in an honest and accurate way, that neither party's being, abused in the situation. And then your last point is, oh, by the way,
how much do I charge?
How much? Who do I charge? How much do I charge? I need a sales team.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the client that we have helped with this, that was it. And some of the things that my thoughts on this are, first of all, stay brand or product adjacent.
Yeah.
look for, if you're in the camping gear world, look for camping gear brands as reach outs where it kind of there's a logic.
Yeah.
And maybe you're both serving the same end customer, and so that makes it natural.
Yeah.
In our case, it helps that we're Lid and we have a whole bunch of other brands and people who are in some mix of 3PL and self-distribution scenarios to begin with, and therefore this is an attractive option. But boy, it's way easier to think it up than it is to execute.
Exactly. Yeah.
Better to just fence off a third of the building.
But even that is not, because we had that discussion with the person I was talking about earlier, and sometimes the shape where the doors are.
Oh, we gotta go.
Okay. But where the shape of the building and also how you use it. Let's say I say my building can do $50 million, but I'm only doing $30 million out of that facility. Doesn't mean that there is exactly 40% of the footprint that can be handed over to someone else, right? Because of fronts, because of different. So the gain may not be as not that it's not attractive. You'll get what you can, but it's again another easier said than done type of thing. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was a lot of fun. Talk to you next week.
Good.